The guy probably messed up everybody. Well, he probably did. But there's more to this story than just Adam and the woman, which she didn't have a name until Adam named her after the fall, by the way. She was called the woman in Genesis 3. And that wasn't some kind of defamatory statement that God was going to call, hey, woman, like, some of us rednecks would say from time to time to our wives, and we suffer the consequences of our ignorance. But she had enough title by being created in the image of God. And then Adam named her Eve. And so, girls, just a sidebar, don't get your identity from a man, please. Get your identity from Jesus, from God. Don't. The guy's not going to fulfill you. God's going to fulfill you. That God will give you a guy, and most girls have been married for a while. He gives you a guy because he gives you a project, but we digress. But let's talk about Adam and the covenant that God made with Adam and the woman, we'll call her Eve just for ease of identification, that he made to them in Genesis 3. Now, I talked about that on Sunday. I talked about the historicity of Adam and Eve, and we talked about the condition in the gardens. I talked about who they were, what they faced, what they overcame, what God said to them. And I used the phrase that's found in Genesis 3 and talking to the serpent, and you will bruise his heel and he will bruise your head, which is a thread that runs all the way to the cross. But let's talk about Adam. And I particularly want to talk about the curse that God said to the three players in the fall of mankind. And this is what he said to the serpent. The Bible says the serpent, in Genesis chapter 3, and I have it opened here, and I'm looking at it, and I saw something I've never seen before this morning as I was reviewing this, that God brings the curse of the fall in order of the perpetrators. And he starts with the snake, or the serpent. Serpent was it says he was the shrewdest animal in all creation. And shrewd could mean deceptive, it could mean intelligent, it could be whatever. But this guy was shrewd and obviously had legs because God cut his legs out from under him. In fact, that's where we get that idiomatic phrase, cut your legs out from under you, from Genesis chapter 3. And he says to the serpent, and this is what he says in the curse. So the Lord God said to the serpent, because you've done this, and this is Genesis 3:14, you are cursed more than any of the livestock. So we have a natural fear of snakes because of the curse. And people can argue with it, but it's right there. You will move on your belly and eat dust all the days of your life. So his legs are gone, so he didn't have a leg to stand on, got his legs cut out from under him. And so he continues on, and I will put hostility between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. Okay, between you and the woman and her offspring and your offspring. So why didn't he say between man and the woman and her and the woman? Because God was ushering in a new order of submission. And submission means a voluntary following of line, and he's saying to the woman and her offspring. Now, obviously, every one of us who are born are offspring of a woman, because women are the one who give birth, not men. And he said they'll enmity, and he will strike your head, and you will strike his heel. Now, that thread curse right there is what he's saying to those who are listening, the man and the woman and the serpent, that Satan, you're going to try for all eternity to derail man. But you know what? You're going to be defeated. And the offspring of woman, I get this, there's a messianic promise that there's going to come a one who is the offspring of woman, who is not conceived by man, but by God. That's what it meant. That the one who's coming is conceived by God, not by man. And the offspring of woman was not like natural childbirth, where all offspring of women, but men are involved in the conception of children. I don't need to explain that. But he's saying there's one coming who is not the offspring as a result of man, but of God. And he will end the curse. It's right there. Wow. That starts changing the way we think and the way we see, because God promises right here a kinsman redeemer, the one who's coming, the one who is like us but not like us, the God-man, Jesus Christ. Now, in Genesis 4, it starts with Adam knew his wife, and she conceived and bore a son. And she says, at last I have borne him, the offspring of woman who will redeem us. And no, he was the offspring of woman and man that was the first murderer, and that was Cain. And so she was even looking for the promise in the first child she birthed after the fall. Now I'm going to throw this as I will talk about this I did talk about this on the weekend. It's going to blow your mind. Did Adam and Eve have more children before the fall? Like we have no idea how long the period of time was when they were created and when the serpent came with his diabolical scheme. We have no idea how long that was. Did they have more children? In Genesis 1, it says, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Obviously, something was going on. And in the curse, and I'll read in a second, to the woman, he says, well, let's go ahead and look at the woman. He said, I will intensify your labor pains. You will bear children in painful effort. How in the world would she know there was an intensification of childbirth if she had never birthed a child? That's one of those things shrouded in Hebrew lore. You're going, maybe she'd already had children and she knew it was pretty easy, but then she is now going to have intensity of labor pains. Now, some of y'all are scurrying to your lexicons and your commentaries, and you're going to try to prove me wrong. That's fine. And you're going to read a lot of crazy stuff in Genesis. A few of my favorites, Moo, Pink, some of the good readings in Genesis. Pink's got a book called Gleanings in Genesis. It's excellent. You could read some of this. Some people, like J. Vernon McGee, go on this crazy mystical trail. You can read that. J. Vernon McGee's an awesome guy. He's with the Lord. Warren Wiersbe talks about this. So you can look, but this is what it's saying. You will bear children, painful effort, your desire. Your desire will be for your husband, yet he will rule over you. Now look at this curse. Because woman is called Ish-ah, which means the one who receives, she's more relationally aware and relationally attuned. She came into man's life by God's creation to bring community, because it's not good for man to be alone, a rescuer from aloneness. And she's going to desire the intimacy before they had the fall in the garden, and man's not going to give it to her, but she's going to want to dominate him and force him into intimacy, and he's not going to do it, and it creates the clash of men and women, and we're experiencing that even today. So, interesting stuff. Then he says to the man, and I know I'm maybe a little scattered here, but I'm going to try to pull it all together. And then he said to the man, because you listened to your wife, and she ate from the tree which I commanded you not to eat. The ground is cursed because of you, and you will eat from it by means of painful labor all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field, and you will eat bread with the sweat of your brow, and you'll return to the ground. Since you were taken from dust, you will return to dust to dust, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. It says that in Job as well. And he's saying to man, hey, your wife is going to desire relationship, intimacy of relationship that you had in the garden, but now you're going to try to find your worth from making a living by the sweat of your brow, the work of your hands, in the contrary aspect of farming or agriculture or labor, and it's not going to produce the results you want, and it's dust in the wind. I'm not going to sing the song. You're singing in your head right now, but it's dust in the wind. So you look at these curses and how God gave these systematic to the serpent. He said, you have violed and threatened and brought down the intent of God. And I'm sending one who is an offspring of woman, not of the conception of man, but the conception of God, who's going to end your curse. And to the woman, he said, the very thing you desire most in relationships, you're not going to get because of this sinful act. And to man, the very thing you need is fulfillment. You're not going to get because of this. But I have a redeemer for you. I have one who is going to come and restore. You see, the Hebrew word for man and woman is interesting. The Hebrew name for man is Ish, and for woman is Ish-ah. Ish means the one who pierces, and I don't need to explain that physiologically. And for woman, Ish-ah, the one who receives. But it also means for man, he's the one who initiates, and the one for the woman is the one who reciprocates. The curse broke that. If you go back to Genesis 2, you'll see that they were naked and not ashamed. Now, this wasn't talking about merely physical sexual intimacy. This was talking about relational and spiritual intimacy, that they had no secrets, therefore no worries. Christ has come to take us back to the garden, to break the curse of the serpent, to strike his head so that we might go back to the intent of God, to live in the redeemed community of God. In fulfillment of relationships, the fulfillment of vocation, the fulfillment of our lives through King Jesus. Okay. Relationships make life rich, and work gives us worth. God redeems both of those things. So I think as you talk, dig into these curses a little bit more and see what God is saying here to you. And the great thing is about the Edenic covenant, even though God gives a curse, he gives a promise. And the scarlet thread begins to weave our broken souls into the fabric of his family. And it starts in the garden and it ends at the cross. So have a good discussion. I hope this helps.